Not since the fall of 2019 has the Corporate Chess League been held live. Tonight, it's a hybrid event. Players from Edward Jones, Enterprise, Ascension, and Doherty will be competing right here in the tournament hall. While players from Bear, WWT, Edward Jones, and Enterprise will be competing from the comfort of their own homes via chess.com. All the points for both platforms will be added up to see which team can be the first and hopefully last hybrid event winner. Which corporation will successfully mix it up tonight? Find out now!
Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Corporate Chess League. As always, my name is Caleb Denby, and tonight, as you've seen from Mike already, it's a very special night for the Corporate Chess League. For the first time in about 2 years, we are returning with in-person chess for our Corporate Chess League players. That's right, they're up there in the tournament hall right now, getting ready for round one, which is set to get underway in just a few minutes here. And I'm really excited to have all these guys back in St. Louis. Saw some people I haven't seen in a long time, and it's great to have chess players back at the chess club. So what are we doing here? Well, let's take a look at our teams for tonight. Of course, we have 6 teams in the Corporate Chess League. I'm talking about Enterprise, Doherty, Edward Jones, Ascension, Worldwide Technology, and Bayer, all competing for the top 4 spots in this Grand Prix season, and then the final 4 are going to square off again in just a few weeks here coming up in November. So these players are running out of time to score Grand Prix points to make it into those finals. Now, I think we just have those 6 teams for this season of the Corporate Chess League, but if you yourself are a member of a corporation in the St. Louis area, you too can get involved. Please, we would love to hear from you. Reach out to us at development@stlouischessclub.org, and we'll get back to you with tons of information on how you can join and start your very own Corporate Chess League team. Aside from that, where do we stand in these Grand Chess Tour standings right now? Well, it looks like Grand Prix standings. We have Enterprise on top with 155.5 points. We have Worldwide Technology in second place with 140 points. Edward Jones has 113.5, and Ascension has 83.5. So those 4 teams in very good position to qualify for the final 4. Now, Doherty and Bayer got off to a slow start this season, but Doherty has an advantage that Worldwide Technology does not, and that is that they are playing in this in-person event, so they have more opportunities to score points. That being said, it's going to take a miracle for Doherty and Bayer to get back into the final 4, but miracles happen. Miracles happen all the time. Now, with that out of the way, let's see where we stand for our pairings for round 1. So, of course, we have Enterprise squaring off against Doherty, and we have Edward Jones up against Ascension. And those are the only games we'll be looking at tonight because those are our in-person competitors. They made the journey out to the chess club. They are up in the tournament hall right now, getting ready to play, and we will be following those games very closely. Now, interestingly, Enterprise and Edward Jones are also competing in the online portion of this hybrid event, which means they, again, are going to have some more opportunities to score points. Now, these in-person teams, they're competing for 72 points total. If every member of your team wins every game, then you get 72 points. But nobody's going to get that many points. You get 20 points for winning the team match, and then you get 1 extra point for each win you get in the individual games. And that's how you add up to that magic number of 72. Well, with all that information, I think we are set to get underway in just a moment here. We'll let all those players get settled in up in the tournament hall. And in the meantime, hello to everyone in the chat room. Thank you so much for joining me here tonight. It's going to be an exciting night of chess. Going to be very exciting. We are playing rapid chess here at the chess club. I believe the same time control as the online event. So expect to see some flags. Online chess is one thing, trying to move quickly, but over the board, it goes even faster. It takes so much time to physically move those pieces, hit the clock, and continue on our way. And it looks like the players are sitting down and are about to get started here. So I'm awaiting the moves on my PGN here. We'll let it take a second to get updated. But yeah, hello to Orange in the chat, Mr. Obvious, Zen Master, Parapsychic Musings, and Jamie Diamond. Parapsychic says, miracles can't happen all the time by definition. It's a big world, Parapsychic. Miracles happen all the time. They just happen rarely in each spot. I don't know if that made any sense, but I'm sticking with it. Anyways, let me take you through our lineup here. So on board 1, we've got John Boyer, who is, I believe, captain of the Enterprise team, and he's leading the charge for his team. He's rated 1900. He's one of the highest rated players in the event, and he's up against Eli Ezrati, who is board 1 for Darty, and I believe does not have an official over-the-board rating. So one of these online chess players that came about during the pandemic, I'm sure, with the chess boom going on. So John Boyer, definitely a huge favorite for Enterprise on board 1, but then something interesting happens on the Enterprise team. We take a look at board 2, we've got Thomas Stack, who I believe has only played 1 or 2 over-the-board tournaments in his life, and is rated about 1100. So that's an 800-point gap between board 1 and board 2 for Enterprise. So it's going to be really interesting to see how that interesting team dynamic is going to play out. John Boyer is going to have to score a lot of points to keep up with board 2. Meanwhile, Thomas Stack is up against Chris Sell, who I believe is also predominantly an online chess player. Moving on down the line, we've got Ken Ma, now with the black pieces for Enterprise, up against Nathan Watson, playing for Darty. And we've got Michael Prather, again with black now for Enterprise, up against John Fingers with the white pieces. That brings us to our second match of the day, which is going to be between Vishal Bardwaj up against Nick Ragone. Vishal is the highest rated player in the event, coming in with a strong 1940 rating, up against Nick Ragone, who appears to be around 1600. Board 2 for Edward Jones is Justin Beckstead with a rating of 1591. I believe that is the strongest board 2 in the event, so Edward Jones looking a little stacked. Strongest board 1, strongest board 2. And he's playing Steve Gilmore, who is also rated around 1500. And of course, he's playing for the Ascension team. Continuing on, Stephen Evans with the black pieces for Edward Jones, also at 1576, pretty high rated, up against Thomas Schaffouch. Maybe that's how you pronounce that. We'll never know. And lastly, Alex Kurford. Don't think we would forget about Alex. The Edward Jones captain is actually playing board 4, which is rather interesting. We've seen Alex, on board 1 or 2 in the online events because I believe he's a little bit underrated over the board. His over the board rating only 1550, his online rating around 1900. So interesting to see him in this board 4 slot. Definitely not where he's used to being, but maybe he can score even more points for Edward Jones with that in mind. And of course, he is playing Maurice Perry. And that's all the players. So again, we are just waiting on the PGNs to get going here. And in the meantime, we'll just hang out a little bit. Hello to Brian Ketterin. How are you doing? And oh my god, they all appeared all at once. Okay, so games are underway. Let's take a look at what's going on here with John Boyer versus Eli Ezrati. It looks like we have a London from John. A more conservative start. Ooh, but then he tricked his opponent. Eli Ezrati maybe knows a thing or two about the London. Goes for this King's Indian defense setup. And this is sort of known as the way to punish London players. By not taking the center early, Eli Ezrati is hoping to activate this bishop on the long diagonal. And if John Boyer had stuck to his guns, played something like c3, really tried to get the London setup, black's going to get a good position. I think that's why we saw John break out now with c4. So kind of switching it up now that he sees that Eli is committed to this King's Indian defense setup. That being said, black has a perfectly fine position, and in fact he goes knight h5, trying to pick up this dark squared bishop. We see John go bishop g5, trying to save it, but black tries to track it down with h6. After bishop h4, though, we see that black is not fully committed to the idea, as he does not continue out now with g5. I think g5 in this case would be very, very risky on account of the fact that you're leaving this knight hanging. I'm not sure if there's any immediate tactics. For example, if you take on g5 and take here, you actually lose the bishop as well. But definitely it's a scary move to play. Maybe that's why Eli went for f6 instead, going for e5. But it feels a little bit wrong to push all of these pawns so far out. And in fact, John immediately capitalizes on this by winning a pawn on h5. We get bishop h7, f4, queen e8, queen f3, and now after c5, d5. And John is just up a clean pawn here. So black is, not totally dead, not totally out of it, but white's pieces all make sense. Black isn't getting some kind of crazy attack here. And so I would much rather be John in this position. I would definitely rather be John. So as expected, John Boyer looking good on board 1 thus far. Let's take a look now at board 2, where we've got Thomas Stack with the white pieces, rated just 1,000, but maybe he's a little bit underrated. Maybe he's also been playing a lot of chess during the pandemic. And let's just check out this opening. He starts with d4, and wow, we're getting something very similar. Another King's Indian defense, and Thomas is going for this f3 setup. Okay, queen d2, d5, castle's queenside, there it is. And we get this takes on d5, take on d5 setup. So against these f3 structures, Chris Sell has accurately decided to go for this c5 plan rather than the quote-unquote more normal e5 plan in the King's Indian. And I think this is a great way to handle it, because now after c5 and d5, we see this bishop is wide open on this diagonal instead of sort of blocked in like you would see with the pawn on e5. And since this bishop is so open, it's going to be pressuring this queenside just a little bit where the white king resides. And black is, again, just going to try and attack on this side of the board. In the meantime, though, it is a Benoni structure, so white's going to have a nice edge in the center, a little bit of extra central space, and it's going to try to use that to leverage it into a kingside attack. We see a6, so this is Chris going for b5, b4, again, trying to slice open that diagonal. Meanwhile, Thomas Stack not going to waste any time. Goes h4 and g4 and h5. So it's one of those fun opposite sides castling positions where both players are just racing to checkmate each other. You love to see it. Okay, knight a4, bishop d7, b3, and knight takes g4. What's going on here? This is just a sacrifice of a piece. Black picks up 3 pawns, but I'm not sure I'm in love with it, because the 3 pawns that you picked up were pawns that were inhibiting the major pieces from attacking your king side. So really interesting decision here to go knight takes on g4 by black. I suppose he was worried about g5 at some moment, but you should be able to get away with knight h5. This is a pretty common idea. For example, like let's say he played a more normal move. I don't know. Okay, let's just say he passed. Then even if white goes h6 and g5, you're not so unhappy to play knight h5. This is kind of an annoying piece for white to deal with. It's blocking this h-file and sort of locking out this rook from the position. Now, if I were black here, I would definitely be thinking about taking this piece off the board, coming knight b6, and just pushing him. Just pushing him. So I don't know if I'm in love with this piece sacrifice, but we're going to see how it pays off for Chris here. In his defense, he has shattered the white center, and this knight's a little bit astray, although I imagine it's going to look to come back in. But black's remaining pieces are pretty decent. This bishop's a monster on the long diagonal, this rook is very active, and this knight's going to be able to jump in to some nice squares as well. The question is the king's safety going to be too much of a problem? I'm inclined to say yes, something like bishop h6, and then just attacking down these open lines. Looks quite dangerous. I think we might be having some trouble with the DGT on Ken Ma versus Nathan Watson, so we'll skip over that one for now. And lastly, board 4, I also hope that we're having trouble here. Either that or Michael Prather got distracted by the open bar and has not made a second move in his game. But I expect that's not the case. So for now, looking good for Enterprise on these top 2 boards, and we'll leave it at that. Okay, with that, let's check in on the other matchup we've got going on here. We've got Vishal playing with the white pieces up against Nick Rugone. So Vishal, of course, the Edward Jones, board 1, the strongest player in the event tonight, up against Nick, who is the board 1 for Ascension. We get d4, d5, and a pretty calm setup. We see Vishal going for the Catalan structures, but then he plays this really interesting move, rook to e1. I can't say I'm exactly familiar with White's idea here. Of course, the normal Catalan would happen after something like c4. White tries to rip open this diagonal using this c4 pawn as a lever, and again, like in the Benoni structures, he's just going for a monster bishop on the long diagonal. With rook e1, Vishal seems to be going for something entirely different. He's playing for an early e4 break rather than the c4 break. So after castles, knight b to d2, knight b to d7, he does just play e4 straight away. Really interesting idea. Black opts to capture this pawn, and that's always going to be a little bit of a risk here for black. Normally, you want to keep this diagonal as shut down, as closed as possible, and taking on e4, that's definitely going to open the diagonal up. So we'll see what he has in mind. We get knight takes on e4, knight d5, c3, and c5. Okay, so what black is doing here is he's saying, I don't care about your bishop on g2. All of my pieces are going to be active. All of my pieces have squares that they want to step to. And if I'm active as well, it doesn't really matter that your bishop has the open diagonal. So black, very combative in this game, going after the center. We get d takes c5 by Vishal. Knight takes, takes. And after some trades, queen a4, sneaky threat. Bishop f5, and now knight h4, queen b6. Okay, very dangerous stuff here. The f2 pawn is attacked. The bishop is also a little bit loose. We see rook to e2 in this case. And then, bishop to d3. So white was making a serious threat here, and that threat is that this knight is going to be left unguarded if you don't do anything. So after white deals with this threat on f2, we see bishop to d3 stepping out of that idea, also harassing this rook a little bit. That's why we get rook d2, and now bishop b5. And I have to say, impressive stuff by Nick so far. Like Vishal, highest rated player in the event, but just look at this activity. Look at these raking bishops, and what does white have for it? I'm not so sure. Okay, queen b3, knight f6, and we see a4, bishop back to a6 now. And now b4, and it does feel like something is starting to slip here for black. Bishop c4 is going to lose a pawn now. Of course, white was threatening b5, just trapping this bishop. I think here you definitely want to put this bishop back on the c6 square. You have to counteract this bishop on g2. It's just too strong. And it's so strong that it won a pawn all by itself. Okay, bishop back to f3. And white still has some trouble here, right? This bishop isn't ideal. This knight's a very strong piece, threatening the c3 pawn. And black's rooks are going to be getting rather active here. But we see Vishal's working to solve those problems. And then a big decision by Vishal. He just snaps on d5, gets rid of that strong bishop in exchange for alleviating the pressure on c3 just a little bit. Okay, interesting choice to capture back with the pawn by Nick. Now he's hoping to just clamp down on this c4 square, I think. But Vishal notices that this d5 pawn might be more of a weakness than an asset. And by the way, we have a result. As expected, John Boyer did end up winning this very strong position that he had with the extra pawn. Let's see how he did it. He went d5, f5, and then, won a second pawn in the center. And then Eli lost a piece on f5. Not ideal. Not ideal so far. And we don't need to see the rest of that game. John is good enough to get that one done. Okay, let's continue on down the board, though. We've got Justin Beckstead for Edward Jones up against Steve Gilmore. Justin, the highest rated, board 2. If I'm not mistaken, Edward Jones is fielding the highest rated player on every board that is in the tournament. They have the highest rated board 1, board 2, board 3, and board 4. So they're going to be favored in all of their matchups. Reminds me of the St. Louis Archbishops. Okay, what is going on in this position, though? Yeah, king g7, bishop takes h6. Okay, that's an extra piece for white. And looking at the position, it looks like white was already up a piece before this happened. So I have to say, looking very good for Justin Beckstead, and looking good for Edward Jones on the top two boards. Although Vishal's game was a little bit scary there for a second. Nick putting up some very strong resistance. All right, let's continue on down the line. Here we have Stephen Evans playing for Edward Jones up against Thomas Schaffouch. Something like that. I don't know. I'm just going to call him Thomas from now on. That sounds good. But again, it's looking quite nice for Edward Jones. We see that this bishop is pinned along the d file. Bishop can't move, otherwise rook takes rook, and you are just losing your rook for free. So it looks like Stephen is about to win a second piece here. Okay, f4, and wow, Stephen actually chooses to just take on c3. Personally, I might have just played something like bishop f6, made my opponent just lose the full piece. You can't even defend it with rook a2, because my other bishop guards that square. But, I mean, this is winning as well, obviously. So bishop takes c3, and that looks like 3 nice games for Edward Jones. Lastly, as expected, Alex is cleaning up on board for 2 extra rooks in this position for Alex. And it's looking like a 4-0 start for Edward Jones. If I didn't know any better, I think Edward Jones might win 4-0. The only question mark left is this game between Vishal and Nick, but Nick's down to 25 seconds, and we are not playing with increment, as far as I know. Actually, no, it might be 10 plus 2. I think it is 10 plus 2. So 2-second increment, that's basically just enough time to make a move if you're really, really fast. So essentially, 0 seconds on the clock, 0 second increment. And here it looks like Nick is just going to end up losing this. We're going to see king f5. Vishal's going to pick up another pawn, and that's going to be the match. Yeah, bishop takes on g5 is trading into a lost king and pawn endgame. And yeah, Vishal won't mess that one up. So it's looking like 4-0 for Edward Jones, unless there's any surprises. And that's it. Yeah, Vishal officially wins up against Nick here. And wow, checkmate. Queens with checkmate. Pretty strong. Checking back in, let's take a look over here at Thomas against Chris. This is the game where Chris sacrificed a piece early on in order to get some compensation and win a ton of pawns. It looks like disaster has happened for Thomas. Bishop h6, but that loses a knight on e2. Black gets the piece back, and oh my god, is this threefold repetition? There's no way this is threefold repetition. Okay. This position appears once. This position appears once. Twice. Twice. I think white can claim a draw with queen f4. Yeah, if white knows about the rules of repetition, he can write down queen f4, or just call the arbiter over, declare his intention to play queen f4, and declare a draw by repetition. So will he be able to do it?
Yes, it's drawn.
Oh, and it's officially a draw. So disaster for Chris Sell. He had everything. He won 3 pawns and then got his piece back. And then here, all he needed to do is not repeat that extra time. Here, you can just take this bishop, you can develop your knight, you can do anything you want, and you're just up 3 clean pawns. It is a little bit scary with the weak king, but honestly, bishop h6, rook h6, queen g5, like, you might even be winning more stuff unless white wants to play queen d2, trade the queens, and lose the endgame. But yeah, if you go something like king b1, I think I can just take this. And this move isn't checkmate. Okay, I might have lied. This move might be checkmate. That move would be checkmate. So, okay, definitely some risk in the position, but not enough, in my opinion, to justify taking a draw here. Worst case, you go knight d7, you go knight f8, you defend your king, and you're going to win this game no matter what. So, very surprising draw, and kudos to Thomas Stack recognizing the threefold repetition. It's really not easy to keep your cool in the middle of the game here and accurately count the number of times you've repeated. So impressive stuff by Thomas. And more results are trickling in here. We have Stephen Evans officially winning against Thomas Schaffouch with f6, pawn checkmate. Impressive stuff. And that just leaves Alex against Maurice Perry, and I believe this game is actually probably over. Might have another relay error here. It's showing that Maurice lost on time, but I imagine we might have seen resignation in this position. 2 extra rooks is pretty good stuff. Pretty good stuff. So if I'm not mistaken, that's a clean 4-0 sweep for Edward Jones, a feat that cannot be matched by Enterprise after this surprise repetition in the game between Thomas Stack and Chris Sell. And I'm waiting on news. The rook defends e8, so queen e8 isn't a move. Ah, yes. So that line I was discussing there where, if I can get to it, where I played queen e8 check. Of course, the rook just defends this. So you can do this. I was right. My first instinct was right. Best you have is check and check. And okay, maybe you actually still don't want to do this because of like rook f8 stuff. So not the line that I showed, but this definitely would be scary. I would just recommend taking that bishop off the board, bringing this knight to f8, and then it's really hard for white to make any progress. You're just going to go rook e8, rook e1, trade off the major pieces, and end the game. But yeah, thanks to the YouTube chat for the correction on that one. And then, yeah, I'm waiting on news for these other 2 games. I think we had some relay mistakes going on here. Pretty sure this game didn't end on move 2, and this game didn't end on move 0, but I could be wrong. Maybe we have some strange things going on.
The move 0 game never began. One of the players didn't show, I guess.
Oh my god, and it's official. We have a no-show. That is why Ken Ma versus Nathan Watson did not start. We are missing a player. So I wonder who it is. Is it Nathan? Is it Ken? Is it both? And yeah, still don't know what happened with Michael Prather against John Fingers here. But we can only hope that it wasn't another no-show. We can only hope.
It appears that all the games have concluded.
And okay, with that, it's official that all games in round 1 are done. Edward Jones does win 4-0. And Enterprise, in the 2 games that we saw, won 1.5 out of 2. That being said, they might have given up a forfeit loss on board 3. Unclear which player actually forfeited. And board 4, also shrouded in mystery. Shrouded in mystery. With that in mind, though, let me see if I can pull up our pairings for round 2 and see what we've got going on. Okay, round 2, it's going to be Ascension up against Enterprise. Ascension we just saw lose 4-zip to Edward Jones, so they will definitely be looking to stage a comeback here. And we have Edward Jones up against Darty. So again, it is a 3-round tournament here tonight, a round robin. Each team plays each other once, and so we're going to see everybody play everybody, basically. But for next round, let's flip on over to it. That is going to pit Nick Rigoni up against John Boyer, Steve Gilmore up against Thomas Stack. Thomas, who, although having a bad position in round 1, showed his practical resourcefulness by claiming a 3-fold repetition when I expect his opponent didn't entirely intend to repeat that many times. So Thomas, very aware of the legal rules of chess, which is always a plus. Then hopefully we have Ken Ma against Thomas. We have Maurice Perry up against Michael Prather on board 4. Of course, Maurice and Thomas playing for Ascension, Ken and Michael playing for Enterprise. That brings us back to Edward Jones, who again will have white in the matchup with the top 2 boards playing white. So that's Vishal in this case for Edward Jones up against Eli Ezrati, who we saw go down quickly against John Boyer. Eli, of course, playing for Darty. Then that brings us to board 2. We've got Justin Beckstead up against Chris Sell. Chris, who, although he was crushing his opponent Thomas Stack in round 1, he was not able to actually get it done. Not able to get it done, repeating moves one too many times. So up and down day for Chris so far. And then board 3, we have Nathan Watson for Darty up against Stephen Evans for Edward Jones. And lastly, John Fingers up against Alex Kurford. And again, hopefully we can deduce with the round 2 information, who exactly is the no-show and how that is going to impact our standings. But that's what we've got so far, and we've got, I believe, another 10 minutes or so before we get underway. So I'm going to take another look at these round 1 games, do a quick little post-mortem analysis here, because this stuff was really interesting. So I want to look at this Thomas versus Chris game. We saw White go for this F3 setup, the same-ish variation, of course, and go for an early Queen D2. And the ideas here are going to be kind of similar to some ideas in, like a Sicilian dragon or something. It's a similar setup where White's castling queenside, going for these bishop h6 ideas, trying to rip open the h-file, and like in some Yugoslav attack, just checkmate the black king. And so we saw, the game sort of following those lines here with g4, b5, h4, rook e8, h5, b4, knight a4. So both players just launching their pawn storm on opposite sides of the board, going for the throat, going for checkmate. But then after bishop d7 and b3, Chris makes this really interesting sacrifice, knight takes g4. I'm curious what the computer thinks about it. Yeah, the computer thinks black is just crushing it if you play my move, bishop takes a4, and then knight b to d7. You just want to get your knight out, push these pawns even further, and white's structure is just going to be totally shattered over here on the queen side. These a-pawns not going to provide this king much shelter. And in the meanwhile, this attack might look nice and all, but you've got this knight on f6, you've got this knight on d7, ready to come to f8 if needed. They're going to defend your king pretty well. They're going to defend your king well enough, at least. So black would have been winning with that idea. Instead, knight takes g4, and yeah, it's not awful for black. It's not awful for black. It's more or less equal in this position. But then eventually, white starts to take over here. Yeah, queen e7. But then after bishop h6, horrible blunder, losing the knight on e2. And then this repetition. Believe it or not, it's -8 in this position. It's -8 here. And actually, if you want to do it with the queen on f4, you can just immediately force the trade of queens. And with that, you're just never getting checkmated. You have 3 extra pawns, and life is just going to be very, very nice for black. But instead, saw that unfortunate repetition, and Thomas claiming that draw whenever he can. So this really interesting game. Draw, not the result I would have predicted. Let's take a look at Alex's game. We didn't get to see too much of it. So we see Maurice parry with e4, and we get a French from Alex with an early c5. And now it's Sicilian French. Now it's a Taimanov. Lots of transpositions here. We saw Alex just developing his pieces, going for some early pressure on this knight over here on d2. White just played bishop d2, trying to break this pressure, but this is just going to blunder a knight on d4, unfortunately, which Alex missed the free knight. So white had his chance here to rectify his mistakes, play knight takes c6, but it looks like white missed it as well. And Alex isn't going to miss that free knight a second time. Knight takes d4, and from here on out, I imagine the game was smooth sailing. Yeah, Alex immediately trades off those pieces, trade down when you're ahead on material, and reactivates, takes some extra pawns. And then this, f4, f5 attack is nothing more than a bluff for Maurice here. Not going to be enough to get any real counterplay. And yeah, Alex playing without 3 of his pieces, but his opponent, those 3 pieces are just sort of off the board. So not as bad as you would normally think. And then yeah, Alex finally does develop his remaining pieces and pushes his passed pawn. And wow, rook e3. Okay, so white was trying to get out of this pin, but it's not going to be good enough. Not going to be good enough here. Alex winning that game in style. Also taking a look, we've got this one between Thomas and Stephen Evans. And this one started in d4, d5. We had a queen's gambit accepted with an early e5. I love it. So in this position for white, I actually recommend this move knight f3. E4, these lines can be fun. The downside is, though, that when you don't control the e5 square, black is able to just make this pawn push in the center, and your pawns are going to start to collapse here. So we saw d5 by white, but this is now, I think, just strictly better for black. You have to play knight f3 here if you want to stay in the game. Instead, after d5, just simply knight f6 is pressuring this guy, knight c3, And then bishop c5, so not the move I would actually recommend. Here you definitely want to go c6, really target these pawns early, or even b5. Try and secure the pawn on c4. And after b5, if you think you're going to take this guy, you better think again, because your e4 pawn is hanging. So bishop c5 instead is fine, and then we do see c6, but just not the most accurate move order. I think black could have gotten a lot more from this opening. Instead, though, we got this interesting battle with black pushing in the center, and then knight g5 is just an unfortunate blunder. This knight is amazingly trapped on the g5 square, just nowhere to run. So knight takes on e4, we see a free piece for Steven, and he's going to continue with that free piece all the way to victory, it looks like. Yeah, just trading down. Again, trade down when you're at material, and then he turns the extra piece into an extra rook, and the rest is history. Just pushing, and checkmate with the pawn on f6. All right, cool stuff. All right, let me check in. Let's see if... No, we've got 4 more minutes before the second round, so we'll keep doing this little post-mortem here. We've got Justin Beckstead up against Steve Gilmore. What happened in this game? Beckstead, of course, for Edward Jones. Steve for Ascension. And we had a Queen's Gambit declined in this case. And it's some kind of semi-Slav here, where we've got a nice little triangle set up. Okay, we get c takes d5, c takes d5, going into the exchange Slav. So a little bit more common here would be e takes d5, and the reason for that is in this position, black's biggest problem is that this bishop is just locked in behind the e pawn. So after c takes d5, that does give black the opportunity to sort of solve that problem, allow this bishop to come out to squares like g4, like f5, and participate in the game. Even bishop b6 is possible. So e takes d5 going to be a lot more common. After c takes d5, it's tempting to go for a totally symmetric pawn structure, but after something like e3, which is played in the game, white is going to have a little bit of an edge here. The reason being, we've gotten this bishop outside our pawn chain. Black's bishop is going to be a problem piece for the foreseeable future. So let's see if that had an impact on the actual game. Okay, both sides are completing development, but if you just compare these two bishops, obviously you would rather have white's piece on g5. Okay, queen c2 provokes g6. Now knight e5. Okay, not my favorite move actually. Yeah, I think black probably should have taken here and gone knight g4. Then, if you're not careful, I think you're just losing a pawn. In fact, I don't think this pawn is defensible. If you go f4, you're losing this guy on e3. So knight e5 would have been a good opportunity for black. Instead, he chooses queen c7. Yeah, but now that gives white time to play this nice move f4, just solidifying this knight here on e5. And now white can always take back with the f-pawn, rip open the f-file, and attack the king. So from here on out, oh, and yeah, that's just a free knight. Not so good. But white already had a very advantageous position. And then we see bishop takes h6, and Steve Gilmore decided to throw in the towel there. Decided enough was enough in that position. Okay, lastly but not least, let's take another quick look at this Vishal game. We saw Nick with the early advantage here, I think. Let's see if it was actually true. Yeah, queen b6, and things just got awkward really, really quickly for white, doing all these awkward rook moves to try and defend your f-pawn. Bishop b5, queen b3, knight f6, but then Vishal really turned it around with these next couple moves here. Bishop a6, but this allows queen b6, bishop b6, b4, when all of a sudden the once super strong bishops are actually the pieces getting harassed. You know, b5 is coming, trapping this bishop, and so from here, white wins an extra pawn and takes control. So if I'm playing with the black pieces, I think I would rather just tuck this guy all the way back to b6, back to a6 right away. It's really not worth it to get this extra tempo on the white queen. Just forces it to a better square. And then from here, you know, we can just play calm. We can keep everything together. We can keep this pressure down these diagonals, and white's going to have a tough time. Instead, though, Vishal picks up this pawn, and from here we saw another interesting choice. Bishop takes on d5, I think is a very good move to just simplify things, although, you know, maybe there's other ideas here. And then after pawn takes, this pawn is just not going to be able to survive here on d5. Yeah, knight takes d5, and the bishop pair is gone. We saw him trade into a winning bishop endgame. And yeah, with these strong pawns over here, Vishal was just always going to win this game. Nick, also dealing with the time deficit, does end up losing here. 2c8 queen equals checkmate. All right, so good games for Edward Jones. And with that, it is 6:45 p.m., so I'm going to flip on over to our round 2 and see if we can get some games going. So to reiterate, we have Enterprise up against Ascension here with Nick. Nick being the surprise in round 1 with a very strong position against the highest rated player in the event, Vishal. So Nick is the guy I'm going to want to keep an eye on here, see if he can be the man to take out John Boyer. Of course, John for Enterprise, Nick for Ascension. Other interesting matchups, I am curious about this Chris Sell person. He had a very interesting round 1 as well with that surprise repetition, but I mean, he did have a very good position against his higher rated opponent. So we'll see if he can repeat the same feat against Justin Beckstead, and hopefully he has learned from his mistake in round 1, learned not to repeat moves. That's my hope for Justin, at least. And yeah, it looks like all the players are at the boards, getting ready for the event to get underway once again. It looks like we've got John over there in the corner doing some extra coaching as well before his round starts. Okay. John, the good team captain, making sure all of his players know what's going on before we get underway. Okay, so what's left? What's left, Mike? Get the tournament started. Everybody's waiting. What is the Corporate Chess League? So once again, if you're just joining, this is the Corporate Chess League. It is a local to St. Louis league for corporations in the area to compete against each other over the chessboard. And if you are in the St. Louis area and are a member of a corporation, you can get involved too. If you just want to reach out to us at development@stlouischessclub.org, that's the email address to reach out to. We would love to have you, and we would love to see this tournament grow. What rating is this tournament? Well, we're going to keep an eye on the top couple boards here where the players are around 1,900 to 2,000 strength, somewhere in that area. And, I'm glad they're not any stronger than that, because then I wouldn't feel qualified to tell them that they're playing bad moves. So very nice to finally be commentating a tournament where I'm stronger than the players. Doesn't happen too often. Does not happen too often. Normally I'm telling Darius Swiertz that he's playing bad chess moves, and why would he listen to me? Why would you listen to me? I don't know. Okay, everybody's ready though, and again, I'm curious to see who the no-show was. It was either Ken Ma or Nathan Watson. One of those players did not show up to round 1, and I'm hoping to find out who it is. Time for round 2. And games have officially started up there in the tournament hall. Maybe we can keep an eye on them with the cameras, but we are still waiting for that PGN relay to come through. And wow, you see them up there, and if I'm not mistaken, there's a little bit of banter going on in the tournament hall as well. Of course, this tournament is a little bit more casual than, your U.S. championships or your Singfield Cups, so the players, are allowed just a tiny bit of a friendly trash talk, friendly banter up there. And as we wait for the PGNs to come out, it is just really nice to have people playing chess in our tournament hall. Really nice to see chess and the more social aspects of chess coming back, especially in the tournament hall. We have been hosting tournaments at the St. Louis Chess Club throughout much of 2021, but it's good to be back in our tournament hall where we have everything set up, we have players nice and spaced out, and you can have some fun playing chess with your friends. Ooh, and just like last game, all at once, we have our PGNs coming in. So let's take a look. Nick has the white pieces this time against John, and we see in Alekine's defense. John was telling me about why he plays the Alekhine. He thinks that this is the opening that's going to get his opponents out of book, but I can only hope that his opponents have not been prepping for him. Although, that's what it looks like. This move, knight f3, not so common against the Alekhines. Of course, the big weakness of this opening is that white is able to get 2 pawns far advanced in the center, uncontested to start with. Knight f3 is not getting that pawn to d4 right away. And instead, we're going to see a more conservative setup, it looks like. He just plays bishop c4, brings this bishop back, and now he's going to go c3 and eventually d4. So just a nice solid setup here for white, not going for anything crazy. We get castles, bishop e3, and after bishop g4, we get knight out to d2. Takes, and it looks like black might be thinking about some kind of e4 push, so we see white play this move h3, trying to force black to step away from this pin. And John Boyer does just that with this move bishop back to f5. So with that, we have a pretty reasonable position for both players here. I do think that there is some discomfort here for white already. I think John's probably happy with his position. And where's that discomfort coming from? Well, it's all about this queen here on d1. In order to complete your development, you want to be able to connect these rooks together. And doing so involves moving your queen out of the way, right? So a normal looking move would be, queen e2, since queen c2 is under attack by the bishop. Of course, queen e2 here is going to be a big mistake, because bishop d3 is just going to pick up material. So white has definitely another problem left to solve before he can claim he is totally done with the development, totally good in the opening. I think that's why we see this move knight to g5. This move is nice in the sense that it attacks this f7 weak point, but more so, it's really important that we're giving this white queen a square in the form of f3. So I expect Nick's plan here, if he gets pushed away with something like h6, is to actually drop this knight into the e4 square, try to come out with queen f3, and bring his rook back to the d file to finish development. Now, John's not happy to just sit back and let that happen, so we see this move knight to d5, pressuring this bishop a little bit. So now, the normal queen f3, black is going to say, okay, you can play queen f3, but I will take your dark squared bishop. That's the price you have to pay for queen f3. And that might actually just be close to winning. After queen e3, bishop h6, this knight would have some very serious problems on g5. Ooh, so we see knight back to f3. I don't think that this was the right way to respond. I think that Nick could have actually taken over this game with the move bishop c5, because this move makes this very important defender of 7 move out of the way. Rook to e8, and then queen to f3, and all of a sudden, the things are lining up around black's king here. You can come back with bishop e6, but I'm just going to take this guy. You have to take with the pawn to defend your knight. Then after knight to e4, just look at the harmony with all of white's pieces, all angling towards the same side of the board, the knight defending the bishop, looking at those weak points in the black camp. I would be very, very happy with white here. Now, that being said, we see knight gf3 instead, and yeah, John's just going to take off this dark squared bishop and use that as a way to gain an advantage. Yeah, now that the dark squared bishop is gone, John goes queen b6. He's aiming for those newly weakened dark squares. Nick, in the meantime, plays knight to c4. He's fighting back for those squares as well. And he really just needs a square for this queen. This queen is just so uncomfortable on this open file. It needs to get off of it. But, e2 is not the most comfortable square either. Again, bishop d3 is no longer immediately playable, but it is going to be, a source of some discomfort for some time to come here. So that's the question for Nick. What do you do with this queen? Where does it go? Where is its home? And I actually think I want to stick with this game a little bit, because this is a very interesting position here. White definitely had some early opportunities to take the lead, but now under some pressure, he has problems to solve. We'll see if Nick is up to the task. Is he up to the task? If I'm white here, I think my move is going to have to be this move, queen to e2. And how am I going to meet this move, rook a to d8? Well, I'm actually thinking I am just going to go with e4. And my point now is that yes, you've gotten rid of my dark squared bishop. Yes, these squares are going to be weak, but I'm hoping it doesn't matter. I'm hoping I'm about to plant a knight onto the d5 square, and I am just going to fight you on the light squares. That's where my battle will take place. I might even put my knight on g5 for a second time. You know I'm moving back and forth a little bit, but that's what I want. Oh, instead, queen to d6, and this one feels a little bit wrong in my opinion. You know, it's a nice advancing move. It feels good to put your pieces into the enemy camp like this. But the fact of the matter is, black now has the bishop pair. And so if things continue to get traded, we continue to inch towards an end game. You know, white has more weaknesses, black has the better minor pieces, and the end games are going to favor black in this position. So that's why I like this move queen e2 just a little bit more. Okay, with that in mind though, queen d6, rook a to c8. And what's going on here for white? We get knight out to g5. Okay, so white, though, is still putting on the pressure here. And he's not following a plan that's too dissimilar to what I was advising there. He is going after black on the light squares. Knight g5, he's targeting f7. If black were to be so bold as to capture on d6, be a big mistake. Look at all these pieces just lining up together on f7. No way is black going to be able to hold all of those weaknesses together. So queen takes d6 is no good here, but that begs the question, if you don't take on d6, what do you do? h6 is also going to be too bold. I think Nick would take on f7 in a heartbeat, and go for queen takes on c7, go for stuff like knight to d6 check, knight takes on e5 check. These kinds of sacrifices, I think, are very, very tempting. Maybe even queen takes first and then take here. And the idea is now after knight d6, no comfortable way to escape this pin. If you go here, you know, I take. If you take back, I can take and play e4. Not so good. Not so good for John. So real serious problems here in the position for John Boyer. Let me just refresh things a little bit. Ooh, h6, and Nick, again, was just not up to the challenge. Couldn't come up with the moves. Let me just check here. I think, yeah, something like e4 is quite strong. But I think queen c7, rook c7, knight f7. Yeah, this is just close to winning for white. Black's best move here, king h7. Not so happy. Not so happy. But Nick, you know, was not in a position to call John Boyer's bluff. He just didn't believe in it. And because of that, we see that John is escaping with his life here. And escaping with his life is actually pretty nice. It's pretty nice here with black. Again, at some point, the bishop's pair will tell the tale, as they say. The bishop's pair will tell the tale. Is that a real saying? I don't know. But let us continue on. We have already a result between Michael Prather and Maurice Perry. Let's see what happened here. We got a 4 knights defense. We saw an exchange on c6 and an early d4. So a pretty typical e4, e5 game so far. And more exchanges occurred. Michael just taking pieces off whenever possible and then just missing a hanging piece. Yeah, that's tough. That's tough. One thing that I think might be going on just a little bit here today is a little over-the-board blindness. These guys, they're used now. They're used to playing online chess. Everybody is. Everybody is used to online chess. And when you get so used to playing on a virtual board like that, you can start to lose some of that board vision that you've trained up for over-the-board chess. The pieces just look different. They feel different. And we're going to see more blunders than normal tonight. That being said, looks like that extra piece was enough for Maurice to win the game without too much controversy. And ooh, wow, this is quite nasty. The bishops and the rook controlling almost every square in the back rank. And then Michael just missing rook e1 with checkmate. Very strong stuff. We have another result as well. Vishal Bhardwaj has already won against Eli Ezrati. Looks like we had a Dutch here, and Vishal playing one of the main normal lines, and kind of coincidentally going for a very similar plan. to what we saw last game, going for e4. Now, I am more familiar with this plan in this position. I think it's a lot more common here for white to play for this early e4 break. And this is just another blunder. This is another blunder by Eli. So over the board blindness, it's claiming quite a few victims tonight. And so Vishal going up tons and tons of pieces early on, and that's going to be enough to win the game. We get rook a7 and check, and ooh, that's a nasty checkmate. Knight d7, and the queen covers it all. Ooh, nasty stuff, nasty, nasty stuff. So 2 results already in the books. And by the way, Michael Prather, that's Enterprise's player right there. So Ascension is the team that grabs the lead early on from Enterprise. Of course, Enterprise and Edward Jones, the only 2 champions in Corporate Chess League history. So anytime you see them struggling with a team, it's big news. So maybe Ascension is the team to do it. And amazingly, the 2 players that had their game end in forfeit due to a no-show, they're both here now. They're both playing chess. So very interesting stuff. And it's more bad news for Enterprise. I'm no mathematician, but I'm counting the number of pieces on this chessboard. Black has more queens, so having more queens seems pretty good. And Black is also Thomas Schaffouch, also playing for Ascension. So if Black is able to convert this game to a full points, that's going to put Ascension at a 2-zip lead, meaning Enterprise could no longer win the match. And in fact, the game is going along the lines I expected. Bishop takes d5 seems like a nice tactic. You unleash the rooks onto the rook on f8, but then there's no follow-up. Black still has way more pieces, and after rook f7, Thomas does find queen takes f7, sacrificing the queen for 2 rooks, and now the rest is history here. No way is Ken going to survive this one, barring any stalemate tricks, which you can never completely count out. So that would be 2-zip for Ascension. Enterprise cannot win in this match against Ascension any longer. And this
game is over.
And this game is over. We have resignation from Ken. And this was my concern with the Enterprise lineup. Yes, they have super strong John Boyer on board 1, one of the strongest players in the event, but those lower boards, that's where they were lacking just a little bit, lacking in experience, lacking in rating, and it came back to bite them a little bit with this match against Ascension. Let's check in on Steve Gilmore against Thomas Stack. So Thomas Stack for Enterprise, this is now a must-win game if they are to hold a draw in the match against Ascension, but it does seem like Thomas is doing very, very well here with an extra knight. So Thomas and John, they've got to get it done now. They've got to get it done. And by the way, John's position looking a little shaky. White did end up, once again, fighting for those light squares. That's really what you have to do when you give up one of your bishops. You fight for that color complex of the other color. You know, you give up your dark squared bishop, you got to be fighting for the light squares. And Nick is succeeding in that, in controlling the d5 square. That being said, I do have to prefer black here. I think this bishop on g7 just has some latent power that we're not really seeing yet. For example, see a move like f5 come on the board, and all of a sudden this bishop starts to get a little bit more active, starts to pressure these guys back here on b2 and c3, and white might get into a little bit of trouble. So do think we have good chances for John here, but he needs to win in order to tie this match. And yeah, we do see f5. John, of course, is going to know about that one. Okay, so tense situation in the Enterprise Ascension matchup, but let's check out how Edward Jones is doing against Doherty. We have Justin Beckstead on board 2 up against Chris Sell. Chris with a strong showing in round 1, but not strong enough to take home a full point. So what's going on here? Well, neither player is down any pieces yet, so it must be a close game. Also very close on the clock. I do think Justin is the rating favorite by some margin, but with the time situation, you know, it's anybody's game here. It's truly anybody's game. We see a trade of bishop for knight on b5, and if I'm Chris, you know, I got to keep it moving here. I got to keep it moving just a little bit. We actually see Chris taking a free pawn on e4, going up in material now. So Chris, again, with a very strong showing. But yeah, both players, you got to keep that pace up. You got to keep that pace up. Once the time ticks down to under 2 minutes, it's not like you have 2 minutes on an online chessboard where you can pre-move for days. This is 2 minutes on a physical chessboard. Every time you make a move, you pick up a piece, you put it down, and you hit a clock. That takes some time. That takes some very serious time. And these players are quite close to flagging. Quite close to flagging. That being said, it looks like Chris might actually get it done here. Chris trying to be a hero for the Doherty team, trying to score those points against the very formidable Edward Jones. Yeah, Chris maintaining that 30-second time edge, it's critical. It's absolutely critical. And yeah, you see these players, they do have some over-the-board experience. You can tell by the way they move the pieces. So smooth and yet still quite quick. Quite quick the way they are maneuvering. So Justin gaining a little bit of ground on the clock. I feel like Chris might be falling for a classic trap here. When you have a good position, you tend to want to spend a little time on it. You want to think, you want to appreciate it. You don't want to mess it up by playing some bad move quickly. But sometimes spending time is the worst thing you can do in a position like this. You just need to keep good, natural moves flowing so that you don't lose on time. Ooh, and rook e8. Oh, Chris, no, that's going to be blundering a full rook. And I wonder if that was enough to get resignation from Chris. I hope not. The time situation, it's still anybody's game. And yeah, no, he did continue on. He did continue on. But yeah, with that, I have to think that Justin is going to be the heavy favorite here. Let's check back in as we're entering time pressure for Nick versus John. Okay, John ended up winning a bishop. That's going to be good enough for a victory there, no matter what the time situation. And here, king takes e5, powerful move. But I think actually what happened here is Steve Gilmore resigned. So John and Thomas getting it done when they absolutely needed to and tying their match against Ascension. And they're lucky to get that tie with the two lower boards just showing an absolutely crushing performance. Okay, let's check back in now on these other games. This game's still well underway. Chris, though, faltering in time pressure and, in fact, just losing a queen now. Very sad for Chris. Okay, Nathan Watson, in the meantime, is losing against Stephen Evans here. 3 extra pieces is pretty good. And on the lower board here, we have John Fingers against Alex Kurford. And my clock is showing 0 seconds for John Fingers. I wonder if this is actually the case. I suspect that John did actually flag here. So let's keep an eye on this Justin Beckstead Chris Sell game as things continue to heat up. You see the players moving at lightning speed. Oh, and they have now completed their game. I believe Chris lost either on time or on the board. So with that, I think Edward Jones might be keeping their perfect record. I think they are now 8-0 on the evening. Very, very impressive stuff by Edward Jones so far. Very impressive stuff. Okay, in the meanwhile, Enterprise, I do think, just only managed to draw their match against Ascension. And that's going to take us to the close of round 2. We saw some games going rather long there. Some very impressive matchups and very impressive games from these players. So where does that leave us? Well, I think we're probably going to be a little bit behind schedule now. We were slated to start, I think, at 7:10, but maybe now we are actually starting at 7:15 rather than 7:10. So we've got just about 5 more minutes before the final round of the action gets underway. So let's take a look at some of these crazy games. This was absolutely wild. How did John Boyer win a piece here? I was just starting to like White's position again. Oh no, don't tell me. Yeah, he did fail at this F5 moment. F5 puts a ton of pressure onto White's position. It's challenging what we call the strong point in White's position. White's entire position revolves around this E4 pawn being here. You take this pawn away, Black is pushing e4, ripping open this bishop, and just with a huge advantage. So John plays knight d6, plays f5, puts on the pressure onto this point for white, and white just wasn't able to maintain this pawn here. Now, you don't have to hang a piece just yet. You can play something like knight to b4, allow the take here, and try and blockade this pawn. And maybe you stay in the game for another little bit, but of course a very difficult position now for white. Instead, white just took on f5, which of course is losing to king takes d5 with an extra piece now for John. f6 is going to provide white a little bit of counterplay, but not nearly enough. Just trades some pieces off and collects this f6 pawn with the rook. And after that, an extra bishop is an extra bishop, and the extra bishop turns into an extra queen, and the extra queen turns into a victory for John Boyer. Very exciting finish there. Let's see. It looks like Chris did just resign after queen e1, rook e1. Going down to that extra queen, just too demoralizing for Chris to continue. Meanwhile, what happened in this Thomas Stack game? How did he win all these pieces? We saw him be up the piece very early on, so let's see what happened here. We saw a break in the center, knight e5, and knight d4, and I guess things got a little bit tricky with this pin for white. We saw knight takes bishop, knight takes, bishop takes g6. Oh, come on. Unforced errors from Steve Gilmore here. He thought he saw a nice little tactic, but it's just not going to work out for him. And in fact, I'm not really sure what he was hoping for. So it looks like he thought he was getting the classic tactic. You move the bishop with check or with a big threat. You challenge the enemy queen, and black can't deal with both problems at once. Now, there's a number of reasons why it doesn't work here. Number one, the queen is defended. Number two, this move isn't check. So no way this tactic was ever working. Black just takes the free bishop and is up a full clean piece here. Again, some of that over-the-board blindness, I think, is taking its toll on these players. And a quick resignation then from Steve to follow that. Continuing on down the line, how did Thomas win this extra queen here? We had a fairly normal opening position. d5 looks like it's actually winning a piece for white. We saw bishop a4, very good. You want to drop the bishop back, keep this pin alive. And then, yeah, white just goes up a clean piece. But something goes horribly wrong here. Okay, bishop f4 walks into this g5 tactic. So no longer an extra piece. Then it looks like these bishops just became very, very, very strong for black. And eventually, so this is the tactic that Steve thought he was playing in the other game. Rook lined up with the queen, bishop moves with check to the enemy king. You can't deal with both threats, and you do end up winning the queen. And then, yeah, the rest is history here. The rest is history. Thomas getting it done with the extra queen. Okay, last but not least, let's check out what happened in these other two games. We saw Nathan Watson with the white pieces getting an early fork. Bishop g4, though, bishop g5, f6 does keep two pieces under threat. So knight e4, yeah, Steven up to an early lead then with the extra piece. And then some more bad tactics, it looks like, by white. Knight h7, but falling for this intermezzo here, queen e7 check, saving the queen, picking up a second extra piece, and then a third extra piece after castles. And 3 extra pieces is a lot of extra pieces. It's a lot of extra pieces, I'm not going to lie. 3 is a lot. So Steven winning that game. And then last but not least, let's check in on this game. It looks like this game was maybe surprisingly competitive with a difficult endgame here for white to be sure, but some holding chances in a practical game. But unfortunately for John, I think he did just flag in this position. But what happened here? Looks like Alex was under some pressure out of the opening. A strong knight on d6, active rook on c6. But what happens here? b5, bishop back to c8. Okay, interesting stuff. And then just knight takes on c8. Yeah, I'm not so sure about this idea. Okay, and I'm definitely not so sure about rook takes c8. Your advantage here with white is your activity. You want to keep your active pieces around, try and invade with something like rook to c7. Rook to c8 in particular strikes me as not the best move, because then Black is the one who gets active, and you're not going to be able to hold on to things here. And yeah, we see that Black constructs the bathtub structure with these pawns. The king sitting pretty in the bath. Here, I have to flip the board for it to make sense. See, it's a bathtub. Black king taking a bath, relaxing, chilling, and that's enough for John Fingers to lose the game. So, impressive stuff so far from Edward Jones, off to an 8-0 start, scoring at 56 points so far, if my math is correct. And they're going for the max. They're going for 72 out of 72 points. And it looks like all the players are congregating, looking around, trying to find their boards, getting ready for this final round of play. Round 3 coming soon. In the meantime, let me take a quick look over here, see how we're doing in the online portion of this event. And I have no idea. I have absolutely no idea. I have no results so far for the online standings. But that's okay. I'm sure they're playing. I'm sure they're playing their games, having a blast. But I did want to reiterate that both Edward Jones and Enterprise are playing in the online portion of this hybrid event as well. That's going to give them some really nice opportunities to score some extra points and pull ahead from the rest of the field. Meanwhile, Worldwide Technology, the only team in the top 4 to not be here for the in-person portion of the Corporate Chess League. So they are competing online. They are trying to hold their spot in the number 2 position here, trying to make sure they qualify for the Final 4 playoffs in November. Once again, just a brief reminder of the format. This is week number 4 of the Corporate Chess League, and there is just one more week of the regular season coming up in November, and that's the last chance for these teams to score points for the Grand Prix. So they are competing to be in the top 4 when the Grand Prix ends at the next Corporate Chess League event. And if they do qualify in the Final 4, we will see them all here back in the St. Louis Chess Club in person for the Corporate Chess League Finals, competing to get their name on that board. Okay, with all that, let's pull up round number 3. Take a look at our pairings. It's the round we've all been waiting for. It's the matchup we've all been waiting for. Who are we kidding? It's Edward Jones versus Enterprise. These two teams are now longtime rivals in the Corporate Chess League, with Edward Jones always looking to be dominant, but Enterprise being the only team able to rip away the championship from their clutches back in 2020. So we'll see if Enterprise can do it again, and we'll see if this is foreshadowing a little bit what we can expect come November in the Final 4. There's really no doubt in my mind, especially with this performance tonight, Enterprise and Edward Jones, we're going to be seeing them in the Final 4, and we're going to be seeing them square off, hopefully, in the championship finals. Although they might be facing off a little bit earlier. That being said, you definitely can't count out Worldwide Technology or Ascension in the finals. I mean, we just saw Ascension tie their match against Enterprise and quite nearly win it. So any team has a chance to take home that trophy. While we wait, though, let's see what we actually have as far as our individual board matchups go. So board 1, that's going to be John Boyer, whose games we've been following a little bit more closely, up against Vishal Bhardwaj. So the top 2 rated players in the tournaments. So that'll be definitely a game to look out for. John, again, is going to have to win on board 1 for his team because the matchups on the lower boards, they're not looking pretty. We have Thomas Stack on board 2 against Justin Beckstead. And again, all of these Edward Jones players are undefeated so far tonight. They have all won all of their games. So Thomas is looking at more than a 400-point rating deficit up against Justin. Meanwhile, on board 3, Stephen Evans also with about a 400-point lead over his opponent Ken Ma. And then lastly, we have Alex up against Michael Prather with a 700-point rating advantage. So Alex, the definite favorite there. And we have games, and oh my god, we both have games and a PGN file. Okay, so let's take a look here at what's going on. We're definitely going to spend quite a bit of time on board number 1 here. This is the matchup of the tournament. And what do we have? We have an Italian so far, and we have Mike Cummer's recommendation. Longtime fans of Mike and the St. Louis Chess Club channel will know that Mike says you are a fool if you allow the fried liver attack. You are a fool. So Mike says, stop that in its tracks, play h6. So Vishal maybe got some last-second advice from Mike before this round got underway. Of course, though, h6 does come with some downsides. Namely, it does nothing to impact the center of the board. That's why John breaks with d4. We get e d4, knight d4, queen e7 now. And we are in novelty territory. This has never been played, according to the Lee Chess database. Okay, knight to c3, d6, and now Kingside Castles. So what on earth is going on here? Well, I have to say that it looks like Vishal might be under some pressure early on. It is a very big concession to play this move h6 so early on because, you know, you're not impacting the center. That's why white is enjoying this comfortable space advantage, this pawn much further advanced than black's d pawn. This pawn is just, you know, making life uncomfortable for black. It's making it so this bishop can't comfortably develop, and it's, you know, introducing all sorts of threats into the position, like knight d5, attacking all kinds of squares. It's helping this bishop attack the king side of the board with bishop f7 threats. And yeah, this knight on d4 also enjoying its central outpost. In the meantime, we see some very cagey play by Vishal here. Knight e5 gains a tempo on this bishop, and then bishop d7. And if I didn't know any better, I would say black is looking to castle on the queen side of the board. And that's going to make for a very interesting game, although I'm still not quite convinced in black's opening play here. I think white should have a very nice advantage. It's enough to give John some pause, though. He's worried about this queenside castles. He's worried about, you know, the attack on the king side that's going to ensue, stuff like g5, g4, h5, h4. It's going to be very interesting to see. And yeah, hello once again to the YouTube chat. Avi says he expects a Botez gambit from black. You underestimate Vishal. Vishal.
Boyer Vishal is over now. They just shook hands.
Boyer Vishal is over? They just shook hands? What is this? What is going on? I need to see this. I need to see this for myself. Let's see if we can get that view of the players. Yeah, they're chatting with each other. But what's going on? They shook hands, they stopped the clock, and then he played queen d8, and then he played h3? What is happening? Did they agree to a quick draw? What is happening? What is happening here? All right. Oh, you know what I think happened? Here, let me, hold on. Let me place some moves on my board here. No, they didn't forget to start the clock. That was my concern. I thought maybe they forgot to start the clock. But, yeah, knight d5, and then the timestamps go away. They must have stopped the clock. Oh, man, who knows what is going on here? Did they agree to a draw? There's no way. They're still playing moves. They're still, like, playing chess over here.
Cummer's at the board advising.
Yeah, the clock is stopped. The clock is officially stopped. They seem to be chatting. Oh, I love this. We're, like, investigating live.
The game's definitely over.
Okay, game's definitely over. And it is officially a draw. I have the result here. So I'm flabbergasted. A quick draw in the Corporate Chess League. This is a first. This is an absolute first. John Boyer and Vishal agreeing to a quick draw, and that shatters Edward Jones's dreams of going the perfect 12-0. Although I'm sure they would be happy with a win here nonetheless. Well, with that, let's take a look at board two. Board two still going. No more quick draws over here. And what a position we do have. We have Thomas with the white pieces for Enterprise up against Justin Beckstead with black. And after b5, I would be getting a little bit nervous here with the black pieces. I think we've seen Thomas with a very similar position with this f3 setup against the King's Indian defense against, I believe it was Chris Sell in round one. But Thomas here is going for some trades on g7, some invasions with something like queen to h6, and then hoping for the pressure down the h file to be enough to win the game. That being said, I'm not seeing the checkmate here for white, and so black is happy to just continue with b5, continue pressuring over here on the queen side. In the meantime, we do see takes and takes on the board, so the players are following my line. We see f takes g6 here, and if you're a little bit newer at chess, you might be surprised to see f takes. You're told capture towards the center, but of course in this case, the h-pawn provides some much needed shelter for the black king, so we take with the f-pawn. That way in this position, the h-pawn keeps these white major pieces at bay, and the absence of the f-pawn actually allows some nice defensive moves here for black as well. You're able to defend along this 7th rank and sort of keep this attack from checkmating your king so immediately. And this is the current position now on the board. So interesting stuff. Thomas going for the throat right away. But I think the problem he's going to run into is, it's sort of a question of what next. You took off that dark squared bishop, you got your queen into h6, you got everything you wanted, but now what? Black isn't checkmated. The game isn't over. What do you do? And that's why I think that this, especially this g5 move that was just played, was a little bit rushed. G5 looks great. You're getting rid of this knight that defends the checkmate, but knight h5 is more than adequate to stop your attack from breaking through. And so we see Thomas just breaking now with rook takes on h5, but this isn't nearly enough. You're attacking with one piece. So if I had the white pieces here, I would have definitely recommended, playing something like knight h3 to start with, or even in this position, knight h3. You need to bring in more and more attackers for your, kingside attack to be successful. You can't just attack with 2 pieces, and you definitely can't just attack with 1 piece. That's not going to be enough for checkmate. So now I do believe Justin is about to take over the game. You could play something like queen g6 even, just totally solidify things. And in the meantime, don't forget, black is attacking himself over here on the queen side. The good news for black especially, though, is that he's officially up material. White has sacrificed a rook on h5, and so any trades only bring the game closer to a very, very good ending for black with the extra material. So Justin in firm control over this game. TS says it's been 10 years since you last played chess. Time to dust off the chessboard. Absolutely. That's what we're doing here with a lot of these players as well. I think this is almost everyone in the event's first tournament back to over-the-board chess in a long, long time. So really exciting stuff. I'm glad we can have them here playing chess once again. Okay, so Justin now continues with b takes on c4, trying to open up this b file. And I fully expect him now to take complete control over this game. Yeah, queen g6, that move that I mentioned, also coming on the board, offering up this queen trade and getting closer and closer to that winning position. Okay, let's continue down the board then. We have Stephen Evans with the white pieces for Edward Jones up against Ken Ma. And it looks like another difficult position for Ken. You see this bishop on b4 is an incredibly annoying piece. All it's doing is keeping this black king in the center. What's the big deal about that? Well, as long as this black king's in the center, this black rook is not able to enter the game. Also, I just counted the pieces. White has more bishops and more rooks, so looks good for Steven. Last but not least, let's take a look, see how Alex Kurford is doing. Again, I think he outrates his opponent by 700 rating points, so he should be doing well. Should be doing well. It looks like Michael's putting up a fair bit of resistance, though. I'm not seeing any extra pieces for white, so that's definitely something. The position, though, does seem like it is quite nice for Alex, and I say that because the black king is miles away weaker than this white king. You see no shelter in front of this king. The h and g pawns provide some very nice shelter for the white king. So black definitely in trouble here, although I do want to stick with this game because this looks like the closest matchup here in the Edward Jones Enterprise battle. Okay, knight e5, that's a really nice move for Alex. He's threatening both a fork on f7 and to just take this g6 pawn off the board. And, taking off the g6 pawn, that's a luxury that white can afford because he does have this shelter around his king. You might think twice as black about removing the a4 pawn from the board, but here, if I'm Alex, I'm probably just taking this guy. Why not? A pawn is a pawn. He does have other options, though. For example, rook a to c1 looks quite tempting, coming in with knight c6 and more attacking ideas. Queen a6, also a very tempting move. There's a lot of ways here for white to take a serious lead. Okay, knight g6, bishop d6. I like this move by Michael. Bishop d6 brings the bishop into the game and does put at least a little bit of pressure onto Alex Kurford's position. And at least a little bit of pressure here. And so Alex now finding himself maybe without a home for this knight. You might want to come back to e5, but I don't know if you're thrilled about allowing takes in this queen trying to invade over here. I don't know if you're absolutely thrilled about that. So Alex probably going to take a second here, make sure he knows what's going on. I should also mention some funny lines here. Knight e5, bishop e5. You might be considering queen takes h5, but I think there's the surprising tactic bishop takes d4 there. If you take the queen, take e3 with check, and then take back. Not the first time we've seen these weird pin discovered attack type ideas between the queens. So bishop d6 here, and yeah, it's on Alex now to come up with something. It's on Alex. What to do? Where to put the pieces? And because of this move, I do think that maybe queen a6 was a simpler way of going about things. You plop this queen right in front of that black king, make him know that he is not safe on this chessboard, and the rest of the moves sort of play themselves. You bring the rook in, you bring the knight in, and you checkmate the black king. Oh, and hello to Patrick in the chat, a long-time viewer, Patrick Daly. Alex is pretty crushing. Why not a king attack? Yeah, I agree. Okay, wouldn't have taken g6 at principle. It keeps your king safer. Yeah, and that seems to be what's going on here for Alex. I'm coming around to the idea that we really should have just attacked the black king instead of going pawn hunting here. That being said, you're definitely still winning this position with white. So Alex played this slightly weird move, rook a to d1. The point, though, was pretty logical. He wanted to play this move, knight e5, but he wanted to make sure that the black queen wasn't going to invade into his camp whenever he did play this move. So just preparing this move, knight e5, was the idea. Now after queen to b3, you're a little bit spoiled for choice here. You can take the knight, but then queen takes b2 actually threatens checkmate. So I think much simpler is just give this check. Just take this rook. Leave this queen back here where it defends your king. And only after you do all that do you think about taking a knight. Okay, queen b5 instead. This is not my favorite move. Not my favorite move. Now queen e3 check is threatened. Queen takes b2 is threatened. And honestly, you've got to start thinking about rook takes g2 ideas. You have to start thinking about those ideas as well. Okay, king c8, also not my favorite move. I would have rather come to the a8 square where I am not on this open file and feel a little bit safer. But king c8 and bishop c7 is Michael Prather's choice. But if these last few moves have taught me anything, the game could go either way. Although, this is checkmate in two. This is checkmate in two. I think Alex probably is going to be able to find that one. Check 1, king b8, only move. Check 2, that's checkmate, and the game's over. So king c8 turns out to be the fatal mistake for Michael. Turns out to be the fatal mistake. And are we going to see it on the board? Are we going to see it on the board? And it's over. Alex gets it done with this knight c6 checkmate. Okay, with that, I believe Edward Jones has officially won the match against Enterprise. The only game left in the air for this match is this Justin Beck said Thomas Stack game. And boy, oh boy, what an absolute mess they have made of this chessboard. My God, I know, some people say that chess is an art form, but if chess is an art form, this is this is the proverbial, urinal in the art museum that they've done here. Oh my God, look at this, like, just organization of pieces. I've never seen this many pieces like stacked up in alternating colors. This is really something here. This is a work of something. This is a work of something, to be sure. Okay, that being said, maybe I've been a little bit harsh. I do think black is still just winning. He's got this F file under control. He's still got the extra exchange, it looks like, still just an exchange. Now after bishop takes e2, he's going to invade, and black might actually be getting checkmated. Black might be getting checkmated here. Oh, and looking at the board. Oh no, they are at the board, it looks like. That was a different game we were taking a glimpse at. Okay, so bishop takes e2. I think Justin Beckstead has this well under control. Let's pop in then on the other game going on, the other match going on between Doherty and Ascension. Looks like Nick finally gets his chance to shine. He put up a very impressive amount of resistance on board 1. He had a tough night lined up between playing John Boyer and Vishal, both of the strongest players in the event. But he held his own. He didn't score any points against them, though, and now he finally gets his time to shine, playing Eli Ezrati, who also had a tough night on board 1, of course. And oh my God, oh no, tell me this didn't actually happen. Tell me this didn't actually happen. C5, Queen C7, Knight E5. Is it true? Is it true? Say it isn't so. Say it isn't so. Oh my goodness. Okay. Well, the free queen was missed. So not the cleanest game by Nick then. Yeah, it looks like some other tactics might be going on here. But at the end of the day, he wins a pawn on c5. He finds a nice way to untangle his pieces, and then trades down into a winning endgame, it looks like. And then, ooh, checkmate is hung by Eli. That's good enough for a win for Nick. Okay, in the meantime, we've got Chris for Doherty, who again has also been putting up some very impressive games on board 2. Did get that half point against Thomas Stack for Enterprise. And what's going on here? Well, he has fewer rooks. That's what's going on here. So looking good for Ascension on the top 2 boards. Looks like 2 points for them, barring any mishaps. And then on board 3, again, it does look good for Ascension, although White has just blundered a piece. So in this position, White is up a piece and a rook. In this position, White is only going to be up a piece, but or only going to be up a rook, rather, excuse me. I think maybe the bishop's moving backwards was missed by Thomas. So tough there. But an extra rook should still be good enough. And lastly, we've got Maurice against John Fingers. And either we've got a relay error or another quick draw, because I'm only on move 3 in this position. Looks like this game is probably over by now, but we'll have to wait to find out what exactly happened on this board. Okay, checking back in. What's the most competitive game still going? I guess you could argue it's this one, where Justin Beckstead is now up an extra piece. And just, okay, very cleanly winning now. H2, rook g1, and black gets a queen. So that one's not super competitive. This one, black does have more rooks, and I wouldn't be surprised if this is actually a resignation here by Chris.
That game is over.
Yeah, so Chris probably resigned in that position. And this one, White has more rooks, so I guess we're sticking here. We'll see what happens here. Worst case, Thomas only needs a half point to secure the match victory here for Ascension. And of course, Edward Jones has officially secured match victory against Enterprise, and likely finishing just a half point away from a completely perfect record on the night. So Vishal, not wanting to test his mettle against John Boyer tonight, agreed to a quick draw. And that is going to leave Edward Jones, assuming Justin doesn't mess this up, with 71.5 out of 72 points.
Black wins that game.
And yeah, Justin officially wins against Thomas. So 71.5 out of 72 on the night for Edward Jones. And that's not even counting their performance in the virtual section. Okay, and
Games may be over, actually.
it looks like all the games might have actually concluded. So a little bit of a mystery here. I'm assuming that Ascension did end up winning that match against Doherty. They have 2 confirmed points. And then 2 mysterious positions. It looks like Thomas won, Nathan resigned, being down, well, actually, potentially Thomas flagged in this position. No, surely not. Okay. I think Thomas probably won against Nathan, and that gives Ascension that match victory there. So the big winners of the night, definitely Edward Jones. Is it enough for them to surpass their competitors, Worldwide Technology and Enterprise? Well, it remains to be seen. They definitely picked up some ground, though. 71.5 out of 72 points. And that's a performance I don't think anyone could have anticipated. So very strong stuff from Edward Jones tonight. Ascension getting that tied match against Enterprise. They have to be happy with that result. Enterprise fielding such a strong team every week. And Enterprise not doing so bad themselves. Although, if any team's disappointed tonight, I'm willing to bet it's Enterprise and potentially Doherty, who also had a very tough night. So very, very strong stuff tonight at the Corporate Chess League. We saw some blunders, as we always do, some of that over-the-board blindness setting in on the players. And yeah, you now see the fun part of Corporate Chess League. The tournament's over. It's time to just hang out and talk about your chess games, talk about your night, see how it's going up there in the tournament hall. Okay. With all of that, I think it's just about time we wrap up our show here. So thank you all so much for joining us for our first ever hybrid event, Corporate Chess League. I had a great time covering all these games. Hopefully you had a good time seeing them as well. And hopefully you catch us here in November for that final week of the Grand Prix, which will be online. And then the moment we've all been waiting for all season long, the Final Four, the playoffs, the real action. It's going to be a blast. So as always, my name is Caleb Denby. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.